Yeah, hey everyone. So as we talked about yesterday, we kind of talked about the SOAP protocol, why it's used, and some differences between SOAP versus REST. So essentially two of the most common ways to communicate messages from a client to a server. So with that said, I wanted to kind of cover more about the message structure of a SOAP message in the fact that SOAP is a protocol, so it does adhere to a strict fine-tuned set of rules. So there's a couple elements I wanted to cover, and then we'll go over a sample request and response profile and ways to validate your SOAP message. So with that said, the first item of the SOAP message is an envelope. So the envelope is mandatory, and essentially the most important part of it is, as the document is XML based, it defines this XML document as SOAP. And this is through a namespace. So as you can see in my example here, SOAP envelope, and here is essentially what defines the envelope and what defines this as SOAP. So if you were to plug this into your browser, you'll essentially see the schema for that specific SOAP version, which is 1.2 in this case. And it'll tell you what's required, what's not required, items of that sort. So as it says, this is the start and end of a message. So if I were to draw this current part out, the envelope would be this big part right here. So ENV. So we got our envelope. Next item. So if you actually go on that website, you can see what's defined in the envelope. But essentially, if you look at the provided document, provided XML file, it shows that there's two child elements to the envelope. One is the header and one is the body. And if you look at min occurrences for header, which we'll now talk about, it's 0. So headers are optional, and they're going to contain application-specific information or metadata about that message. So for example, some sort of authorization or any items of that sort that the receiver should understand. So kind of to build on that, here is an example header. So as you can see here, so they're setting a trans element to the value of 234, and the must understand is set to 1, which essentially means that the receiver must understand this header, and if it does not, it should bomb out the process. Pretty easy so far. So if we're drawing it out again, here's your envelope, and then the envelope has a header, so I'm going to call this H. And that's what we got so far. So next item is the most important part, and it's the body. So the body is going to contain the actual SOAP message and whatever needs to be processed by your receiver. So there's obviously going to be request versus response bodies. So what you're sending versus what the server is going to respond to you with. So the reason I kind of included that is a part of the body is called a fault element. So this can essentially contain, it's a child of the body, as it says, indicates what could have went wrong. So typically what you'll see with you send your request with a body, the response is usually going to contain the data that you want or the fault, but typically not both. So here is a sample body. So you're seeing here, I want to look at the item procedure that is predefined by this receiving server. And I want to get the price of apples. Pretty easy. So here's what we got. So envelope, header, and body. But then the body, as we talked about, can contain a fault message. So once again, pretty easy. And here's a sample request. So here's your XML tag right here. Then how do I identify my XML to be a SOAP based document? So right here, here's your envelope. As we talked about, the header is optional, so it doesn't need to be it. So here's a sample request. I want to get the apple price. And here's your sample response back. Get price response, get your price, it's $1.90 for an apple. So with that said, your next question may be, well, how do I validate if a SOAP-based message is valid and meets these specifications and this schema defined? And this will kind of build on the concept of a WSDL, which we'll talk about in the next topic. Have a nice rest of your day, guys. Bye.